The first book was a little dark. This second book is very dark. And if you can't handle anything beyond vanilla sex scenes, this book is not for you. And if you have to ask what that means, this book is definitely not for you. Welcome back to Lori and Miss Batty. It's that time again where I share all the books I read last month, and I let you know whether I thought they were good or guano. I read 6 books in April, and again, they were all romance. Technically, there's a couple I think that aren't totally romancy, but they're all different genres and different, like I said, different levels of romancy. I did read a few arcs again this month. Again, that's advanced reader copies, but not as many as last month. I don't think. I'll have timestamps below if you just want to jump ahead to something. Go right ahead. So let's get into it, shall we? The first book I read was Midnight Masquerade by Halley Larkin, and this is the Brightley Sisters series, book 1, and I did receive it as an ARC. So this is the first in the series, and this is the first book I've ever read by this author. It's Victorian romance, and it centers around the eldest sister, Charmaine, who's like the eldest sister in a very respectable, aristocratic family. She's dealing with an ailing father and trying to secure the future for her 2 younger sisters, and is sort of, dealing with all the societal pressures. And then the hero of the story is Kosta, who is a disgraced Russian duke. He got in a duel with the Tsar's nephew and killed him. Oops. So he flees to England and takes refuge with his stepfather because his mother had lived in Russia. She was English. She lived in Russia, and then moved back to England and married this other guy. So Kosta moves to England to seek refuge, and the stepfather turns out to be a dick and pretty much makes him a servant. Like, he had promised him that he could learn his family business and he would, be a part of that. But basically, he turns him to a servant and blackmails him into doing his dirty work, which involves spying on Charmaine and her family because they have a long-standing beef because Charmaine refused to marry his oldest son. Anywho, Charmaine and Kosta originally crossed paths at this masquerade ball that Charmaine is holding for charity. There's a lot of intrigue, there's a lot of back and forth, there's a lot of plot lines. I feel like it could have been trimmed down a little bit. Love Kosta as the hero. He shows real growth from being like this pampered duke to, living the high life in Russia to coming to England and basically being a servant and the class structure in England and all of the prejudices that come with that. Charmaine is kind of the martyr of the family, and she can get annoying in that, like, oh, I have to take care of everything, and just, like, she can be annoying. There's also a good deal of social commentary here. Like I said, sort of about the class structure and about how people are treated differently and the mixing of the classes in Victorian England. So that's cool. And I'd say it's more plot than romance. Overall, it's definitely a slow burn. And overall, good read. I gave it 4 bats up. The next book I read is a book called Fighting Fire, Reno in Flames, number 1. I forget how many of there are. And it's by Tracy, Cramer-Kelly. Also, first time I've read anything by her. And also an ARC. So Kate and Riley, Caden's the dude, Riley's the chick, have been firefighter partners together since they were in their firefighting academy. But there's been like something smoldering between them all these years. Caden goes through a nasty divorce, and then it's like, do they cross the line from just work partners to more? And then Caden gets injured during a fire, and then they must confront their feelings about each other and deal with them. Caden's an all-around good guy, like kind of Mr. America, very likable, single father. I mean, you could probably put him in the DILF category, just saying. Riley's sure of her feelings for Caden, but could be a bit stronger advocating for herself against some of her chauvinistic co-workers. That's the only thing that bothered me about her. But having worked in a male-dominated industry previously, I understand that you pick your battles, and you just prove that you belong by being a badass every day. My only real complaint, and when I signed up to read this as an arc, I didn't realize this, is that it's a novella, so it's way too short. I wasn't ready to be finished reading this story, and you can read this in one sitting, pretty much. So it's good. I'll give it 4 bets up. I do wish they had been longer. And I did pass on reading the second one, as it recently came up for ARC, and I was like, I just can't be bothered with novellas. I can't. Yeah, if I'm gonna read it in one sitting, no, it's not worth my time. So, but if you want a quick read, a nice hot summer romance, perhaps, by the pool, check it out. This is appropriate. The third book I read is also the third book in a series, and that is The Wicked Wallflower by Tracy Sumner, and it is number 3 in the Duchess Society. I've read the second book, but not the first one, and I don't feel like you have to have read either of them to enjoy the third book. And yeah, I've never gone back and read the first book, which is a little odd because I really like the series, but there's nothing about it that I feel I need to read. I don't know. Maybe if I get like super bored and run out of things to read, I'll go back and read it. But this is also Victorian, I believe. Pippa, the heroine, is a well-developed character who knows what she wants, and it isn't the boring life prescribed to her by society by being the sister of a duke. She has an engaging backstory, and she hasn't always lived the gilded life. Her brother inherits the dukedom in book 2, and it wasn't like a direct line. Like they were like the cousins, they were like the poor relations, and then all the direct heirs in the dukedom line died. But anywho, I digress. And the hero of the book is one of her brother's friends, Xander, and he's a rough and tumble kind of guy. He's from the wrong side of the tracks, but they were just building the tracks then anyway, so he's from the docks. But he also has this super caring side where he's trying to make a difference in his community, and he's a businessman, so he's providing opportunities for people to work for him and sort of elevate them from poverty. But I mean, he runs a gambling den and like a distillery and stuff. He's like super rich. So because of that, he's welcomed into society, but kind of on the fringes because he, like, again, class distinctions. Falling for your best friend's sister is always tricky, especially given their places in the class structure. Yeah, like I said, Pippa was the daughter of a baron, and then now she's the sister of a duke, and Xander or Macaulay, whichever one, they call him by both, is rich, but like I said, he doesn't have the right background or the connections. Love this book. The tension between these two very strong-willed characters is really good. It's enjoyable. I actually like this one better than the second book. I look forward to reading the rest of the series. Also a slow burn. So there's definitely relationship building, dealing with all the stuff that's going on around them and with their families. It's not like an insta love where they're just like, ooh, and then they get married and everything's fabulous. Like, they kind of go through some stuff. So this one is getting 5 bats up. I really liked it. I really did. And like I said, you don't have to have read the other one. So if you want to, just read this one. It's great. The fourth book I read, number 4, is a book called Siren Star by Bettina M. Johnson, and it's number 2 in the Secret Sirens series. Say that 3 times fast. Ooh. Let me preface this by saying I don't really read that much paranormal romance anymore because I'm just not into like shifter romance anymore. I mean, every now and then I'll read a vampire romance because I have to keep my goth card. I originally read the first book in this series, Siren Rise, as an arc, and it's different. She's a siren, which you don't come across much in paranormal. And the hero, or the love interest, we don't know what he is. There are vampires. I can't remember if they're werewolves, but it's not your typical sort of supernatural romance. But anyhow, oof, this one's a doozy. First of all, I almost bought it, which is a big deal. If you hang around for a while, you'll figure out that I really will only buy books that I feel like I'm going to read more than once. If I feel like I'm only going to read it once, I'll just borrow it from the library or try to get an arc of it or find some way to read it for free. But I have been waiting for this book to come out, and I almost bought it. And I went to go buy it on Amazon. It was the same price to get 3 months of Kindle Unlimited for this one book. And I was like, oh, you got me. I was like, oh, you got me. I can't argue with that deal. And I know they think that, oh, you'll just forget about this, and then you'll, at the end of your 3 months, we'll start charging you full price. Joke's on you, Amazon. Whenever I do any of these, like, promotional things, I put that shit in my calendar right away. Put a reminder in there. And I do it a few days before it's due, so in case I, dig around and don't do it, I give them some other time to get it done. But yeah, I leave myself a reminder to cancel it before I start getting charged full price. And I can read a lot of books in 3 months. Especially on Kindle Unlimited. Because a lot of series I like are on Kindle Unlimited. Anyhow, back to Siren Star. Second book in the series. You have to have read the first one. 100%. Don't even try to read this book and figure out what's going on without having read the first one. In fact, I had to look back. I just read the first one in December, and I almost feel like I should have reread it before reading this one, because there's a lot. I really enjoyed the first book. Like I said, it's something different in the supernatural romance realm. And in the second book, we finally start to get some answers about who or what Logan is and what his angle is. He's the big love interest. There's so many lines of intrigue going on that I almost feel like I need to reread this book just to get a better feel for everything that happened. Because I kind of read through it pretty fast. I read through the first one pretty fast because it's a page turner. You're really invested in it. Yeah, and even though some questions are answered, we're still nowhere near a conclusion on anything. Oh, I didn't mention the heroine's name is Tarney. She's a siren. We find out all kinds of stuff about her in this book. The big thing about it is the main conflict is that her dad's the leader of the Sirens or whatever, or mermaids, or it's all confusing. And he's a really bad guy, and she's trying to take him down. But she gets mixed up with some bad vampires and all this other stuff. There's a lot. The first book was a little dark. The second book is very dark. And if you can't handle anything beyond vanilla sex scenes, this book is not for you. And if you have to ask what that means, this book is definitely not for you. The only thing I can somewhat equate it to is the Cushiels series from like the early 2000s. What was it by like Jacqueline Carey? This is way darker, but also way shorter. Way shorter. It's dark, and it's quite an emotional ride. It was, oof, yeah. Tread lightly if you want to read this series. You have been warned. It's really good though. I enjoy it. I do have to downgrade this book, and this was, you'll hear me say this a lot, because this book was obviously not proofread. A lot of authors that I read are self-published, or maybe they have a very small team, so I give them some leeway. I give them more leeway than some of the big authors that I read. And I'll let a few typos slide here and there, but when several places are missing words to make the sentence make sense, or the wrong word is used, then you know it wasn't proofread by an actual human. And there were bits of conversation that were missing quotation marks, so it was hard to follow, like when the speaker switched. It's just really messed up the flow of the book to, you know, kind of have to stop and be like, oh wait, what did she really mean, or who's really talking? So I have to wonder if it was like, and this was not an issue in the first book. I went back and checked my review of that, because I would have mentioned it in my review if it was an issue, and I don't remember it, and I didn't mention it. So I just have to wonder if it was a matter of trying to meet a deadline, rushing to get this out, because yeah, the first book didn't have this problem. Yeah. And from what I gather, Bettina writes, her other books are really lighthearted, kind of supernatural rom-com, and this is her place to experiment with being really dark. So you might want to try her other books if you're afraid of this book. Oh, I shouldn't say afraid of this book, but if you don't think you can handle, or you're prepared for this book, try some of her other series. It was really good. If it had been proofread, it would have been 5 bats up, not an issue. But it's got to be 4 bats. Proofread. Get your shit proofread, people. Find somebody on Fiverr to do it. I used to have a Fiverr profile to proofread books. I would still proofread books if someone wanted me to. It needs to be read by an actual human. So, after the dark and intense ride that was Siren Star, I needed to go to my happy place. I needed something to cleanse the palate, something I knew wouldn't be too heavy and that I would enjoy, and yeah, no surprises. So I went with Rebel's Temptation by Vlad Kahany? I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. And this is number 2 in the Rebels of Gracewyck series. I read the first one as an ARC, but I read this one on Kindle Unlimited. What? This is something a little bit different. It's Victorian romance written by a man. Like I said, I found the first book in the series through an ARC. Really enjoyed it. You don't have to read that one to enjoy this book. I think there's enough background information given so you're not missing on anything. Yeah, I really enjoy his style. I can't find that much information on him. He lives somewhere in Eastern European, in Eastern Europe. He lives somewhere in Eastern Europe, and his style is totally different than your average romance novel. There's a lot of relationship building, complicated family dynamics, and a sexiness that's just different than like all the cliched romance sex scenes. It's just different. I really dig his style. In the first book, he kind of has some, author's notes at the end of the book, and I love when authors do that. to sort of talk about their process or the choices they made. And he talks about how one of his least favorite tropes is lack of communication. And that drives me insane as well. I hate when I'm reading a book and I'm like, just frickin' talk to each other. Figure this shit out. So you don't find that. Although this one a little bit, just a little bit, but not like where you're like, these books are longer than I think the average romance novel. And then I read like somewhere like on his page or once I signed up for his email list or something, he said his favorite book was Crime and Punishment. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense that you write these long books. Quick rundown on the series. 3 brothers from an aristocratic family all leave home and sort of denounce their father after their mother dies, kind of in quick succession. Then they all make their way in the world, doing totally different things. The eldest brother goes into business, the second brother is a writer, and the third brother is a ship captain. Anyway, father dies, and the terms of his will state that all the brothers have to return to their ancestral home, Gracewyck, in order for their will to be read. So they all have to come back after like 12 years of not setting foot there and be there at the same time. Like, they've seen each other over the years, but they've never been home, and I don't think they've all ever been together at one time. So this book is about the eldest brother, the eldest Bane. Their last name is Bane. Sydney is his name, and their neighbor / childhood friend / his former betrothed, Evelyn. She actually comes to Gracewyck to save her friend from marrying Sydney. Not only to save her from like an imperfect match, but kind of to get back at him for breaking her heart all those years ago. But spoiler alerts for the first one. Her friend hooks up with the second brother in the first book. So it's not an issue. Like, saving her friend is not an issue. Anywho, she gets stuck at Gracewyck because there's this terrible rainstorm. The roads are a muddy mess, and part of the bridge between their estates washes out. She's stuck. Anywho, Sydney learns that she's no longer this shy and aloof girl. She's now a widow and the owner of a very successful horse training and racing business. Because as a widow in Victorian society, you have more freedom than a non-married woman. And it turns out her aloofness when she was younger was due to anxiety and panic attack. Now, I'm no psychiatry historian. My degree's in design technical theater. But I'm pretty sure Victorians would have just chalked this up to nerves or hysterics and given her laudanum instead of teaching her breathing methods to control her panics. And just totally disregarded her and condescended to her. Kind of the way the medical profession still treats women. But what do I know? Anyhow, we get a HEA, happily ever after ending, at the end of the book, and the long-awaited return of the third Bane brother, who's the ship's captain. What's his name? I forget it. I feel like I enjoyed the first one a little bit more. This one was still good, though. 4 bats. 4 bats. So the final one, and when I read the little blurb that came out about this one to like sign up to read it, I was like, I'm in. Sign me up. So the name of this book is Bionic, a sci-fi rom-com by Jess K. Hardy. It is number 2 of the Ignisar series. So this is described as a sci-fi rom-com. And much like that odd vampire-pirate mixture from last month's video, I'll link that above if you haven't seen it. When I read that, I was like, this is going to be awesomely good or awesomely bad. I'm in. I didn't even realize this was book 2 in the series until I came to write my review on it. So I definitely don't think you need to read the first one. I'll probably go back and read it, though, because this was just fun. Anywho, Elaine is a human bionic who recently installed a hormone upgrade and is basically going through puberty, although she has the physical body of a full of an adult woman. And then Sim is the ship's doctor. They work on this like pleasure cruise, like space cruise ship that's like just a den of hedonism and debauchery. Sim is the ship's doctor, but he comes from this different race of people. They're blue, by the way, and they're empaths, and he can't read Elaine because she's a bionic, and that kind of freaks him out. But he's instantly physically attracted to her because, I mean, she was designed to be perfect. Hilarity ensues when he tries to explain the changes that are going on with her and what she's experiencing and relationships of a more intimate nature. Because at the beginning of the book, she has this boyfriend who's also bionic. Anyway, yeah, it's just it's hysterical. Meanwhile, there's something strange affecting bionics across the galaxy, where they are like spacing themselves through an airlock or just doing weird things or, taking escape pods and just disappearing. And this is where it veers from rom-com to fairly serious discussion about the rights of bionics and how they are basically treated as slaves in this culture. I mean, they clearly missed the episode of Star Trek The Next Generation when they have that trial and they determine that Data is an autonomous being and not like property of Starfleet. And they do have access to past history because there's Britney Spears references. So they could have just watched that episode and been like, oh, yeah, they're not slaves. But anyhow, there's a lot of action that happens. They wound up being away from the ship for a long time and finding all the missing bionics. And that's really interesting what happens then. But yeah, in the end, all's well that ends well. It's a fairly quick and enjoyable read. And yeah, sci-fi rom-com. That was a new one for me. I thought I'd read almost all the genres. I'll probably go back and read the first one at some point, like I said. 4 bats up. That was everything I read in April. I know this is a little late. I ran out of energy, like you do sometimes when you're team autoimmune. Actually wrote my outline for this weeks ago, but I'm just now sitting down to film it. What did you read in April? Are you interested in reading any of the books I mentioned? Let me know in the comments below. If you missed last month's Good or Guano, I'll link it at the end of this video. I want to point out my new batcon.org shirt. You can't get this anymore. It was a special they were doing for Bat Appreciation Day. But you can always find information on how you can support bat conservation below. So click the buttons, do the things to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. I know, YouTubers always say that. It's true. So that's all I got this month. I've already read 6 books in the month of May. It'll probably be 7, possibly 8 by the end of the month. One of them is a space opera. So next month's video won't be completely romance books. Stay batty, my friends.